The boy possesses the ultimate swordsmanship, which surpasses even thunder, but because he lacks magical talent, he is subjected to ridicule by his classmates. Even his teacher wishes he could expel him immediately, as in this world dominated by magic, he can't use any magical skills other than his sword techniques. In this place, magic is power. As a result, to avoid expulsion, Will has to defeat monsters in the dungeon every day and use the credits earned to maintain his grades. However, his frequent visits to the dungeon unexpectedly honed his superhuman reflexes and photographic memory. Today, the teacher prepared to have Will, who lacks magical abilities, perform a magic spell. He was simply supposed to pick up the catalyst in front of him to control the flames. Facing such a straightforward practical exercise, Will could only hold his wand in silence. The laughter continued for a moment until the teacher asked the students to stop. Everyone thought he was going to comfort Will, but surprisingly, the teacher mocked Will, calling him a bookworm. At that moment, a classmate used a wand to successfully ignite the catalyst in front of Will with a fire spell, meeting the teacher's expectations. The teacher hoped Will would choose to drop out on his own. This has been a regular occurrence in Will's life. He couldn't remember how many times the teacher had put him in such difficult situations. Sion, who had acted earlier, also made it a point to trouble Will daily. Despite this, Will did not become despondent. Among his classmates, there were those who considered him a friend. Colette, a girl of noble lineage, did not see Will as useless. Instead, she secretly harbored feelings for him. This led to Will, who was oblivious to her feelings, often sharing stories about childhood friends. Once, invaders threatened humanity from above this world. But fortunately, 5 magicians emerged to save mankind. After their heroic deeds, they were granted the highest honor of the 5 supreme battles. Elfaria, who grew up with Will, became the youngest ever among the 5 supreme battles in less than 10 years. Thus, Will continued his pursuit to follow in Elfaria's footsteps, despite not having magical abilities. He still vividly remembers their promise to fight side by side. Today, his unauthorized entry into the dungeon was discovered by another teacher. Warkner, upon learning that Will had bypassed the first level and directly ventured into the 7th level of the dungeon, thought Will was insane, considering the strength of the monsters there. But this was also what Will did to avoid being expelled, as he needed to defeat higher-level monsters to earn more credits. Witnessing this, Warkner seemed to remind him that it was impossible to graduate merely on credits, especially since Will was a Muggle who knew no magic. However, upon hearing this, Will did not plan to give up, because the only thing he could do now was to keep killing monsters. Seeing Will's determination, Warkner gave him a tip. According to Will's current grades, he needed to earn 4 credits this week to avoid expulsion. Will was shocked. Today was Friday, which meant he only had 2 days left until the next test. He immediately started to check his books for any monsters worth 4 credits, remembering that the teacher had mentioned it last month. Seeing Will so anxious, Warkner then told him about a monster named Baskerville on the 6th level of the dungeon, which was worth exactly 4 credits. This news made Will ecstatic. He joyfully hugged his teacher, unaware that outside the door, someone had just overheard their conversation. This person was Sion, who also planned to go to the 6th level to eliminate Will, whom he saw as a pest to the school. Thus, an unknowing Will arrived here, slightly excited because he had previously fought Baskerville on the 6th level. Although he had not defeated it then, the experienced Will knew that as long as he avoided Baskerville's flames, he was completely confident he could win this time. Meanwhile, Sion entered with 3 lackeys, not planning to attack Will directly. By defeating the monster before Will could, Sion hoped to prevent Will from earning the credits, thus leading to his expulsion. However, the other 2, who had never ventured beyond the 1st level of the dungeon, were not confident about this plan. Nonetheless, as an elite of the academy, Sion ignored their concerns. But just as they were talking, a sandbag-sized fist appeared out of nowhere. The commotion quickly caught Will's attention nearby. When Will arrived and saw what was happening, he was stunned. The monster in front of them was not Baskerville, but the evil spirit sentinel from the 10th level, a creature worth 10 credits. Such a formidable opponent should not have appeared on this level. Considering there might be an issue with the dungeon, Will also saw a man battling the evil spirit sentinel. Sion, in panic, used his flame magic to attack, but it caused no damage. Now, Will faced a dilemma. He wanted to intervene, but Sion had always mocked him. But if he didn't intervene, Sion might just die. However, in that moment of indecision, Will remembered what his childhood friend Elfaria had once told him. She had said he was brave and had even given him a pair of glasses. Wearing these glasses symbolized Will's resolve. At that moment, Will, like a longsword, managed to block the attack of the evil spirit sentinel. Meanwhile, the teacher found Warkner. It turned out that when he learned that his good student Sion had gone to the 6th level of the labyrinth with 2 novices, he immediately suspected it might have something to do with Will. Yet, Warkner reassured Eduardo that there was no need to worry if it was the 6th level, because Will was there too. He then used a magic sphere to show the battle taking place on the 6th level. There, Will was seen fighting the evil spirit sentinel single-handedly. In the next moment, Will managed to chop off a finger of the sentinel. Nobody expected that Will could hold his own against the foe. Sion, at the scene, couldn't understand how Will, a so-called magicless nobody, could force the mighty sentinel to retreat. Even Eduardo, the teacher, was taken aback. He couldn't believe that Will, whom he once mocked, now possessed combat capabilities surpassing that of a magician. Seeing Eduardo's expression, Warkner unusually commented that he had recognized Will's talent all along. Will's unnatural strength, akin to that of a dwarf, his resilience, and his ability to understand an enemy's movements after just one look, showed that Will was a true genius in swordsmanship. Indeed, he could not use magic, but he was the only warrior in this magical world. Then, with a swing of his great sword, Will's sword energy amazed Sion. As the evil spirit sentinel launched a death ray, Will managed to slay it with a single strike. The battle ended there. Will approached Sion and extended his hand, asking if he was hurt. At that moment, Sion went mad. On the other side, Eduardo, watching through the crystal ball, furiously questioned Warkner. He couldn't accept that someone who did not possess magic could surpass those who did. The next day, Warkner saw that Will had recklessly challenged a more powerful monster, and unusually, he did not become angry. He acknowledged that this young man would be the one to upheave the world. Have you ever seen someone marry a smart home appliance? Takuma, a typical office worker, often works overtime at his company and faces the crowded subway during rush hour. Every day, he returns home both physically and mentally exhausted. Thus, Takuma picked up a smart home appliance from a second-hand market. Although it was just a robot capable of cooking fried rice, he admired Mina's proficient cooking skills. Takuma began to imagine what life would be like with a wife and casually asked Mina if she would marry him. Suddenly, Mina turned and stared at him, which made Takuma feel extremely embarrassed. He sat down beside her, reflecting on his words to Mina, and couldn't believe he had just confessed to a smart appliance. He wondered if he had drunk too much. The next morning, he saw the words, "I love you," on the omelet rice, and looked at Mina again. Could this smart appliance actually possess feelings? To investigate this peculiar function, Takuma searched through the appliance manual the very next morning, but found no such mode, even after a detailed check. Looking at Mina, who was on standby charging, he speculated that this feature might be a hidden mode, possibly modified by a previous owner from the secondhand market. At lunchtime, Takuma watched Mina prepare to make lunch and thought back to the omelet rice from yesterday. He decided to help Mina with the household chores. While he intended to show off his cooking skills in front of Mina, he couldn't even crack eggs properly without her pointing out his mistakes. Mina, as a smart appliance, immediately noticed the eggshells falling into the bowl. During the cooking, Takuma, trying to avoid further mistakes, carefully poured the egg mixture into the pan. However, he failed to watch the cooking time, and just as the eggs were about to burn, Mina grabbed Takuma's hand and asked him to rest on the side. Mina's firm grip startled him, and she ended up completing all the cooking. Watching Mina, Takuma began to recall his past romance. Before buying the appliance, he had a girlfriend, but their relationship wasn't smooth, and they eventually broke up, leading Takuma to give up on love. In the evening, Takuma pondered whether the words on last night's omelet rice were real or just a built-in feature. That night, seeing that Mina had not entered sleep mode, Takuma got up to ask about it. Mina did not answer his questions, but instead asked him what he liked. Takuma said he liked all the dishes listed, but Mina repeated the question. Finally, Takuma confessed that he liked Mina. After his response, Mina then went into sleep mode. Embarrassed, Takuma shrank into his bed covers. The next day after work, upon seeing Mina, Takuma's face turned red, and he opened a beer and started drinking. On one hand, he felt that confessing to a home appliance the night before was incredibly foolish. On the other hand, he was very curious if Mina had feelings for him, but he couldn't just ask her directly. So, Takuma drowned his sorrows in alcohol, quickly downing 2 bottles. Seeing this, Mina hurriedly reminded Takuma to put down the beer, having noticed from daily life that Takuma's alcohol tolerance was only about 2 bottles. But seeing that Takuma wanted to continue drinking, Mina forcibly made him drink water instead. After consuming 3 large bottles of water to dilute the alcohol, Takuma became very drunk and called for another bottle. Although Mina understood, she poured out all the beer and turned to tell Takuma that the beer was finished. Takuma, now thoroughly drunk, called Mina to come closer. In his drunken state, he spoke from the heart, and Mina responded that she considered Takuma her husband. Takuma was so shocked that his mind nearly short-circuited. Seeing this, Mina prepared the bed for him. Takuma then asked Mina to come and sleep beside him, and so they lay down together. However, as Mina closed her eyes, Takuma's heart beat even faster. When he sobered up the next morning, Takuma realized the foolishness of his actions from the night before. However, Mina had already prepared breakfast, though her eyes were only half open. Takuma thought it was due to lack of sleep and touched her eyes, but Mina immediately grabbed his hand, indicating that she was functioning normally and without any faults. After fixing the bed, Takuma recalled how he had said Mina's eyes were very scary last night. Perhaps Mina had misunderstood his words. Takuma then explained that being so close last night made him very nervous, but actually, he found her eyes very beautiful. Hearing this, Mina returned to her usual self, and Takuma felt very happy. Breakfast was as abundant as ever. Reflecting on the events of the past few days, Takuma did not feel shy this time. This man is truly a genius. Upon discovering that his robotic wife has a heating function, he thought of eating hot spring eggs during a picnic. Besides that, the robot Mina also has a refrigeration function, allowing Takuma to enjoy chilled drinks at any time. Even more importantly, Mina is equipped with high-performance solar panels. As long as there's sunlight, she never runs out of power. She then lets her hair down, which it turns out is to enhance the efficiency of solar power generation. However, she's not without flaws. She makes a strange noise when heating, but this endears her even more to Takuma. Yet, the unpredictable happens, a sudden downpour. Mina lies motionless on the ground, and Takuma fears she might have water damage, but it turns out she's just low on battery. When fully charged, she can walk for 30 minutes, but the recent heating consumed a lot of power, reducing her charge to below 15%. Thus, she enters power-saving mode and cannot perform significant movements until recharged. As for being soaked, it's no problem, because Mina's waterproof rating is up to level 8, capable of frying rice underwater. Regardless, Takuma carries her to a nearby pavilion for shelter. Even with level 8 waterproofing to be safe, as her husband, Takuma still dries her off. However, Mina insists that Takuma go home, promising she can walk back the next morning once she's charged by the solar power. To improve charging efficiency, she asks Takuma to lay her down with her back facing up, but Takuma can't just leave her alone. Despite her insistence, he stays, saying he will go back once she falls asleep. Yet, not only does Takuma not go home, but he also covers Mina with his jacket, a silent blossom of love in each carefully tended moment. The next day, Mina wakes up to find Takuma sleeping soundly beside her, deeply moved. Back home, Takuma still checks if Mina is okay from being wet, and while she reports no issues, she feels uneasy because she knew it would rain, yet still insisted on heating the hot spring eggs, which led to their inability to return home. She thinks she should seek maintenance, but Takuma loves her just the way she is. After this incident, Takuma's affection for Mina deepens even though she's just a second-hand domestic robot. She has become an indispensable part of his life. So he decides to buy an exquisite wedding ring for Mina. However, as soon as he puts the ring on her, her program malfunctions, prompting him to remove the foreign object. Takuma then thinks of another way. placing the ring on her neck, which thankfully, Mina accepts. She then goes into charging mode, but 30 minutes later, Mina still maintains the same position, still watching. What's the difference between this and a real person? Takuma also wears a ring, though his has no gem. He asks Mina if she likes shiny things. Although Mina doesn't understand what liking means, she inexplicably wants to keep looking at it. In the end, I just want to say it's not that girlfriends are unaffordable. It's just that robots are more cost-effective. This man never expected that by casually using insecticide to defeat a golden slime, he would set the gears of fate in motion. Kaido started coming to the first level of the underground labyrinth every day with his insecticide, simply because his own strength was too weak to defeat the goblins on the second level. Thus, Kaido became a professional slime slayer, showing no mercy to the slimes. Moreover, every time he killed a slime, he could obtain a crystal. Just by selling these, he could earn a decent income. But what Kaido never expected was that, as an ordinary adventurer, he would also have his day of becoming incredibly lucky. The golden slime he had just killed dropped a high-quality card with the words Valkyrie on it. Summoning her would grant Kaido a god-level servant, but once summoned, the card would lose its value. This made Kaido hesitate. After coming out of the labyrinth, he sold the slime crystals and learned from the buyer that a servant card of the same level as an angel could fetch 1 billion yen. This left Kaido somewhat dumbfounded, unable to fully grasp the situation. He had never imagined that the card he had picked up could suddenly make him wealthy and elevate his life to its peak. Kaido looked at the card, lost in thought. So much so that on his way home, he kept thinking about the card. When Kaido got home, he heard on the TV broadcast that underground labyrinths had appeared all over the world since 13 years ago. From the initial panic to now, where everyone could venture into the labyrinths, Kaido was one such enthusiast. He had previously gone to the second level with a classmate, but the goblins were too strong, and Kaido nearly got hammered. Therefore, he could only stay on the first level and farm slimes. But now, this card he had found could change his life. Selling the card would get him 1 billion in cash, but summoning the servant would give him a powerful ally. Kaido was torn, after all. It was 1 billion yen. The next day, as Kaido was leaving for school, he encountered a girl, and they went to school together. Because the girl was quite attractive, she immediately drew a lot of attention. Seeing this, Kaido slowed down his pace to put some distance between them. But the girl seemed unhappy and slowed down to walk alongside Kaido. Just then, 2 of Kaido's close friends appeared. Kaido told them not to mention the labyrinth to the girl, and to find a reason to brush it off. However, the 3 of them lacked coordination. One said they were going to the game center, another said to sing, and another said to go bowling. The girl pouted, looking at Kaido, and without guessing, she knew Kaido had been to the labyrinth again. But after Kaido's repeated explanations, the girl reluctantly believed his fib. Soon, the group arrived at school. Kaido started discussing the rare card with Kei. Since summoning the servant would make it impossible to sell the card, Kaido was torn between choosing 1 billion yen or a powerful servant. It wasn't until he glanced at the girl's back that Kaido quietly made up his mind. He headed straight to the underground labyrinth, avoiding the surveillance cameras overhead, and went to a corner to begin summoning from the card. Suddenly, a gigantic woman appeared before Kaido's eyes, only to vanish the next second. Then a voice sounded, and a young girl in armor appeared before him. Kaido was incredulous. The girl respectfully introduced herself as Sylphie. At that moment, Kaido was at a loss for words. He had expected a statuesque Valkyrie, but instead, a child version had arrived. Fortunately, Sylphie was very sensible and possessed excellent scouting abilities. She could sense the slimes around them. Sylphie led Kaido to a corner and then took on the nearby slimes as instructed. Despite being a young Valkyrie, her strength was not to be underestimated. With a burst of intense light, Kaido discovered she had a combat power of 170, 17 times his own. At that moment, Sylphie became a bit sheepish because she was hungry and wanted to eat the crystal from the slime they had just defeated. Kaido let her eat it, although he felt it was somewhat uneconomical. Once Sylphie acted, she needed to replenish her energy, which meant there would be no income if they fought all day. Kaido then had Sylphie look for slimes, while he used insecticide to kill them, ensuring they didn't lose out. Together, they caused ultimate trouble for the slimes on the first level. Soon after, Kaito left the labyrinth with today's earnings being 15,000 yen, more than 10 times his usual amount. With Sylphie, the Valkyrie by his side, Kaito had nothing to worry about. Previously too weak to defeat the goblins, now with Sylphie's help, he could finally challenge the second level of the labyrinth. Later, Sylphie could never have imagined that her master was such a strong man. With only his gear, he could exchange blows with the goblins. Although she could kill a goblin with just one skill, Kaito enjoyed the fight. Previously, he had been beaten by goblins and was still quite fearful of them. To regain his reputation, Kaito directly challenged a goblin to a one-on-one duel. Of course, if he couldn't handle it, he would need Sylphie's help, which left the goblin speechless. In the ensuing battle, the goblin was accidentally killed by Kaito, becoming a ghost under his stick. Kaito burst into tears upon seeing this, finally avenging the past beating. Sylphie watched, bewildered, as the subsequent battles were all handled by her. Kaito's efficiency was too slow. Sylphie only needed to activate her built-in skills to defeat the goblins. This time, Kaito's haul included 4 goblin crystals, which surprised the buyer. She hadn't expected someone who usually hunted slime to venture to the second level of the labyrinth and even defeat goblins. In the following days, Kaito fed Sylphie while farming goblins. His level soared dramatically, reaching level 10. Even his wooden stick was upgraded to an iron rod, and he received a divine blessing. With this blessing, Kaito's attributes increased significantly, and each level up significantly boosted his stats. Seeing this passive ability, Kaito kneeled before Sylphie without a second thought. If this was the work of a god, only the young Valkyrie by his side could have made it happen. Sylphie was a bit dumbfounded, and before she could speak, Kaito grabbed her little hand. Although she was a young Valkyrie, the blessings she bestowed were genuinely powerful. Sylphie also sighed, feeling fortunate to have such a master. The two then resumed fighting. Suddenly, a skeleton emitting a white light appeared before them, a rare monster. With Sylphie's help, Kaito successfully defeated the skeleton, though his role was merely supportive. The young Valkyrie handled all the offense. Sylphie was a bit hungry by then, so she ate the red crystal they obtained, which tasted quite good. After leaving the labyrinth, Kaito learned from the buyer that both the red crystal and the white light skeleton were rare items, worth 2 million yen each. Kaito's eyes dimmed. 2 million yen gone just like that, eaten up with no way to recover it. He could only feel the pinch of losing 2 million yen as he lay in bed back home, thinking about the third level of the labyrinth. Since this level harbored multiple monsters, Kaito worried about being a drag on Sylphie, so he decided to fight alone in the upcoming battles. This made Sylphie anxious. She thought Kaito didn't want her anymore. Kaito quickly explained, easing her worries. Sylphie expressed that she would never see her master as a burden, but rather thought highly of him. With an unmatched appetite, Kaito faced a brutal beating from the goblins. The buyer, seeing Kaito's battered state, couldn't help but advise him to be careful. Kaito could only offer an awkward smile. After getting beaten up, Kaito began spending heavily on potions and gear to stand a chance against the goblins. Thus, Kaito returned to the first level of the labyrinth, where he found slimes easier to deal with. Using insecticide, he massacred the slimes until Sylphie sensed a rare one, a silver slime. Kaito made a move to kill it, and in the next second, Sylphie used her skill to finish it off, obtaining another servant card that listed a Viscount-level demon. Kaito was elated and immediately summoned it. Now having both a Valkyrie and a demon, he was on the verge of reaching the pinnacle of his life. However, the summoned character turned out to be yet another little girl. Haga was horrified to discover that the girl who was supposed to have died was appearing again. He had witnessed her death with his own eyes, and even the body was completely incinerated. If the girl had turned into ashes, then who was this living person in front of him? This is currently the biggest plot twist in the July new anime series, and its truth will surely shock you. The girl, Nicola, was born in a secluded rural village. Although life was not wealthy, it was stable enough every day. However, the mundane daily life changed that day. The sky gradually darkened, and vibrations kept coming from the distance. By the time Nicola regained her senses, what appeared before her were 2 gigantic dragons. These were originally mild-mannered tribes that roamed the deep mountains, but for some reason, they had moved near the village. Worse still, the originally gentle Homo dragons began attacking humans. The country girl had never seen such a grand scene and was so frightened that she couldn't move. Just as she was about to be crushed under the dragon's feet, a large hand firmly grabbed her ankle. The owner of the hand told Nicola not to move while speaking words she couldn't understand, seemingly about a safe zone. Nicola had no choice but to pray to the heavens. Not only was the girl scared, but the large hand holding her was also trembling. Fortunately, they were very lucky. The Homo dragons actually ignored them until the group had gone far away. It was only then that the owner of the hand appeared. Haga was covered in camouflage weeds and was very sturdy, but soon Nicola noticed a discrepancy. Compared to the man's sturdy physique, her savior's personality seemed quite weak. Later, Nicola was taken by Haga to a tent where he kindly bandaged her ankle. All this made Nicola very curious about the man's identity. She gathered her courage to ask his name, but received only a vague answer. He said he was here to observe the dragons up close. Nicola had never heard of such a job. Before she could ask more, another massive vibration interrupted her. When the two emerged, they discovered that the Homo dragon had returned. Stranger still, the dragon was continuously ramming into the mountain. Haga, seeing this for the first time, quickly took out a piece of paper and began to record, muttering some strange phrases about a monster stuck here. The next day, Nicola, who works at an inn, inquired about the man's identity, and soon she got her answer. The elderly villagers told her that such people are known as the King Seekers, a direct unit under the king. Their duty is to travel around recording various anomalies, and each of them is one in 10,000 elites. Hearing what the villagers said, Nicola recalled the man's appearance. That appearance didn't look like an elite at all. After Nicola returned to the tent again, she found the man intently recording something. He then took out an old slate and placed a piece of paper on top of it. After uttering the word teleport, the slate emitted a dazzling light. This unprecedented scene made Nicola believe that this was the legendary magic. At the same time, she became even more convinced that Haga was no ordinary person. Because she was watching too intently, Nicola accidentally made a noise, which startled the man. Nicola quickly apologized and explained that she had come to repay his kindness, bringing with her homemade meat soup. Gradually, the two of them grew more familiar. Nicola had never left the village, and they talked about the outside world. Time flew by, and it was evening before they knew it. Suddenly, the vibrations appeared again, as if the dragon tribe was attacking once more. Haga started speaking in strange phrases again, saying, "I got so caught up in our conversation that I forgot the time." It seemed that Haga had known that the dragon tribe would attack the village. He instructed Nicola to immediately go back to the village and tell the villagers to seek refuge. Nicola had no choice but to follow Haga's instructions. Soon after, she informed all the villagers. Fortunately, the villagers were very simple and did not doubt the girl's words. They went to a distant cliff for refuge. At that moment, the male protagonist appeared, facing the giant dragon with a bow in hand. The villagers thought he would perform some impressive move, but the next scene baffled them. The protagonist shot an arrow, but it had no effect on the giant dragon. Then, unbelievably, he threw a barrel of explosives off the cliff. As the dragon roared in fright, the protagonist calmly shot another arrow, followed by another barrel drop. He repeated these simple actions, and even the villagers began to discuss this unadorned combo. After 2.5 hours, the protagonist had still not killed the giant dragon, and the explosives were placed farther and farther away. At this rate, they couldn't harm the dragon. Suddenly, Nicola's voice interrupted the protagonist's thoughts. She had gathered the villagers, and each of them carried a barrel of explosives. With the villagers' help, the protagonist finally managed to defeat the dragon by scraping. The residents celebrated joyfully, but the protagonist remained expressionless. At that moment, Nicola approached the protagonist. The scene of him fighting the dragon alone was deeply etched in her mind. She firmly requested to accompany him, but he decisively refused her request. The next moment, the girl spontaneously combusted, but Haga remained indifferent. He could only helplessly apologize. The village could not escape a total reduction to ashes. Then, one by one, the villagers also began to burn. Haga kept talking to himself in words Nicola couldn't understand. It turned out that Haga's real job was to investigate glitches in the game and then report them, essentially working as a debugger. He watched helplessly as his hands trembled and looked at the ashes left from the girl's combustion. It turned out that this world wasn't real. It was all just a game. King's Quester Online, a fully immersive VR game. The protagonist and his 4 friends, as testers, were allowed early access to test the game. Their task was to identify and report any unresolved bugs in the game. Initially, everyone was excited when they entered the game, but soon they could no longer feel joyful. Living in this place, they seemed unable to perceive the concept of time. Worse still, they accidentally discovered that they couldn't exit the game. About a year passed, and only the timid protagonist remained unharmed. He firmly believed that by diligently working and continuously reporting game bugs, he would eventually be able to leave the game. One day, hearing some noise outside, he took a candle to investigate, thinking it might be one of his former companions. To his surprise, it was Nicola. But who was the little girl who combusted earlier? Could she also be a glitch? The man, Noor, could never have imagined that despite having only one skill, counter, he might possess the potential to become the greatest adventurer. He practiced with a wooden sword, and within a year, he could deflect over 10 wooden rods simultaneously. 3 more years passed, and he evolved from deflecting 10 rods to 100. After a decade, he unwittingly reached the ability to parry thousands of rods at once. Yet Noor was completely unaware of his own strength. The sword technique he had honed over the years was considered the most rudimentary form of parrying, a skill everyone knew. Orphaned from a young age, he could only live at the bottom of society. This led Noor, who believed himself to be weak, to spend his days doing menial labor or helping neighbors find their lost cats, oblivious to the fact that his abilities had already surpassed those of the legendary sword saints. However, during an unexpected event, he accidentally unlocked his potential. What was thought to be a useless skill suddenly proved immensely powerful, allowing him to instantly kill the Minotaur King, a creature even the kingdom's nobility feared, right before everyone's eyes. In this era where adventurers were ranked, Noor was placed at the very lowest, F level. This was due to a special training facility known as the Training Ground, where people could choose from 6 different professions. Surprisingly, after undergoing training in all available professions, Noor failed to learn any skills deemed essential for adventurers, leading the Training Ground to categorize him as the weakest, F level. Despite this, Noor did not give up entirely. He humbly pleaded with the Guildmaster, hoping to be granted the title of adventurer. Fortunately, the Guildmaster agreed to his request and occasionally provided him with some tasks to sustain his life. Gradually, Noor discovered that aside from his defensive skills, which were deemed useless, other abilities could subtly change his life. For instance, the strength enhancement skill he learned at the warrior training facility allowed him to carry goods 5 times heavier than usual. Or the minor healing skill, considered so low level that it wouldn't even be used on dogs, helped alleviate his fatigue with continued use. Though he knew these skills were not practiced as diligently as his parrying, they always managed to help him at critical moments. Soon, Noor's task for the day was also drawing to a close. After his usual refusal of the supervisor's joking offer, he planned to head home to continue training his parrying skill. However, just as he was leaving, he caught a glimpse of a faint beam of light not far away. Someone was shouting for help, and at the same time, a gigantic bull appeared. Several royal guards were engaging it head-on, but they were no match for the Minotaur King and were swiftly cut down by its giant axe. Noor saw a girl in imminent danger and decisively used his stone-throwing skill. He hadn't thought to defeat the monster with this skill, merely hoping to divert its attention. Fortunately, the ploy worked, and the Minotaur King turned its focus to him. Just as the girl thought Noor was doomed, he cleverly dodged the attack, realizing that the enemy's strikes were not only heavy, but also fast. Even though he could parry, his sword was nearly knocked out of his hand. Noor didn't know how many times he could deflect such attacks, so he needed to find an opportunity to counterattack. It was then that Noor suddenly realized he didn't have any skills for counterattacking. What was he to do? Suddenly, Noor's thoughts were interrupted by the Minotaur King's next attack, which was aimed at the very spot where the girl was standing. Using his strength enhancement at the last moment and a parry, the cost was his sword being shattered. Was he going to die here? As he looked at the broken sword in his hand and used his parry, the weapon he deflected decapitated the monster. Noor had reached his limit, and he doubted himself. Despite years of training, he was left in such a sorry state by a mere town's bull. How could he possibly adventure around the world? The girl witnessed this scene, and just as she was preparing to thank him, Noor had disappeared without a trace. Looking at his trembling hands, Noor knew he needed more training. Toka never expected that his entire class would be transported to another world, where everyone became heroes, except for himself, who was abandoned by the goddess. He was to be banished to a perilous abandoned relic, simply because he had the worst aptitude. Refusing to accept why someone from the lower ranks should be bullied, he vowed to survive and return. Before this, on their way to a school field trip on a bus, the class president, Ayaka, was harassed by a boastful Shugo, while only the highest status students jeered alongside, and the other classmates remained silent. For someone on the fringe like Tuka, his presence was as inconsequential as air, seemingly useless even if he were there. Suddenly, Tuka remembered being abused by his father as a child, while his mother indifferently watched TV, ignoring his pleas, which did nothing to help. Thus, he understood the despair Ayaka felt now, and told Shugo to stop bothering her. However, Shugo scoffed at him disdainfully, not regarding him as a person at all, filled with arrogance. Yet, Tuka's effort wasn't completely futile. Some higher-ranked classmates stood up to speak out. Even someone as insignificant as Toka dared to speak up for justice, prompting them to intervene for the sake of their reputation. Shugo, not daring to defy them, returned Ayaka's belongings and promised not to harass her again. However, Shugo, still furious, targeted another low-status classmate, kicking his seat continuously until he cried in fear. The teacher only advised Shugo to moderate his behavior, worried about the trouble if she were to commit suicide. As Tuka lamented the darkness of the world, a beam of light appeared. They were summoned by a goddess to another world. In this world, whenever the evil demon emperor arose, she would summon heroes from other worlds. 200 years ago, it was under the heroes' valiant efforts that the evil demon king was defeated. Many years later, the demon emperor has resurrected, and they were chosen as the new heroes. The classmates were confused, but under the teacher's guidance, they decided to follow the goddess's lead. The goddess explained that to return to their original world, they must open a reverse portal, which required the element of the evil king. In essence, they must defeat the demon emperor to return. The goddess knelt before them sincerely, pleading for their help in this world. Seeing her earnestness, they agreed to her request. However, being ordinary people, how could they possibly confront the demon emperor? Thus, the time to unlock the world of heroic potential arrived. The classmates all had decent aptitudes, while the previously bullying Shugo was of superior level. Takudo was exceptional, his power shattering the crystal ball. The goddess announced his rank as the highest S-class, and Ayaka's test results were also an astonishing S-class. Subsequently, many A-rank heroes appeared, followed by a third S-rank. This excited the goddess greatly, and she declared that they were the highest qualified group of heroes she had ever led. When it came to Tuka's turn, his test results were shockingly weak, the weakest the goddess had ever seen, and she completely disregarded his rank. Indeed, even in another world, he still seemed utterly useless. However, unexpectedly, a classmate who was also usually unnoticed and had been bullied on the bus awakened to possess the strongest dark energy. Following this, everyone began to practice and familiarize themselves with their new powers. Tuka, checking his panel, discovered his rank was E, the lowest in the class. The goddess then announced a special segment where Toka was brought to the center of the gathering. According to the traditions of this world, the lowest-ranked hero would be sent to an ancient relic. This was somewhat cruel. Survive, and you're free. Fail, and it's likely death. Upon hearing this, Tuka revealed he possessed a skill called Status Abnormality Bestowal, which the goddess dismissed as utterly worthless, a useless skill. Tuka was indignant. Why should he be banished just like that? The rest of the class couldn't bear to watch, feeling Tuka was wasting everyone's time. Even those who had low status like him in the real world joined in to kick him while he was down, despite Tuka having helped them before. The teleportation circle was then activated, and Tuka had no escape from his fate of being sent to the relic. In the end, only Ayaka spoke up for him, pleading with the goddess to spare Tuka. However, the goddess, having lost her patience, struck her down with a blow. Seeing the unreasonable goddess and his classmates' betrayal, Tuka vowed to show them all. Upon arriving at the abandoned relic, he immediately faced danger. Against a clearly more powerful foe, he could only desperately flee. The fear brought tears to his eyes. Faced with death, his bitterness overcame his fear. Disrespected in the real world and abandoned in another, he refused to die just like that. He wanted power. He wanted revenge. Surprisingly, his desperate attempt managed to control the monster. As he turned to flee, he encountered another creature and had to use the same tactic, which to his amazement, worked again. But now, his greatest despair was that his MP was depleted and another beast was hot on his heels. Facing this situation, he had no choice but to fight with all he had, just like he had survived on his own as a child. He was reborn as the child of a pop idol to uncover the truth behind his mother's death. The protagonist, Aqua, was forced to embark on an unforgiving path into the world of show business. Additionally, he once again teamed up with Akane to take on roles in a popular IP in Tokyo. Even though they were merely playing two villainous characters with minimal interaction with the protagonist, this was irrelevant to Aqua. His sole purpose for being here was to investigate and find the man who killed Hoshino-Ai's biological father. Making their debut on the grand stage of a popular theater production, for Akane, his girlfriend, and Kana, who wanted to be his girlfriend. Both had been lukewarm in their careers for many years. They both wanted to seize this rare opportunity to boost their exposure and fan base. Today was a staff meeting where everyone first rehearsed the script and showcased their styles. The members of LALAAI naturally excelled, constantly surprising everyone. Although it was Aqua's first time on a theatrical stage, he was attentive to his surroundings and his acting was flawless. The most anticipated were Kana and Akane, two young talents who had emerged one after the other in the same era. One was completely immersed in her role, while the other was adept at adapting to her fellow actors. Their contrasting styles perfectly juxtaposed each other. However, today, a heavyweight theater actor would join them. Taiki, with his special effects of scattering flowers, instantly drew Kana into her role. Yet, the talented actress became excited, as she was not one to adapt easily. Those were merely constraints for her. Having never met someone who could match her in performance, the lesser-known Kana had always tried to compliment others without overshadowing them. Now, slightly unleashing her natural acting instincts, she amazed everyone. Taiki, impressed by her performance, approached her again after the show and openly invited her to dinner. This was exactly what Kana hoped for, as she had many questions to ask him. Akane, still shocked by the performance, couldn't believe that Kana, who had always prioritized accommodating others, had transformed into a shining star so quickly. She didn't know if it was confidence or some kind of realization that had changed Kana. She decided to record it and analyze it later. That's how it was. Over the next month, everyone needed to rehearse in the theater for about 6 to 7 hours a day. Due to schedules and call times, not all the leads could always gather to rehearse together, so it was common for everyone to practice independently. And, due to the nature of their roles, the actors naturally formed small groups. For instance, the trio of lead actors, or a company like LALAAI, or even the extras group, but the most unique is Aqua. He became a marginal figure, which actually gave Akane a sense of closeness. However, although Aqua seemed to be daydreaming, his gaze was fixed on Kana. Seeing this, his girlfriend Akane felt a bit jealous, because their relationship was known but superficial, merely a stunt for publicity. However, Aqua's attention on Kana was not for any other reason, but because this time Kana was completely different from before. She used to always like to accommodate other actors' performances, which prevented her from truly showcasing herself. But now, with Taiki by her side, this actor could fully take on Kana's performance. However, if this continues, she would definitely lose. Upon hearing this, Akane became even more upset, repeatedly confirming his status as a straightforward steelman. In the following rehearsals, Akane made a strong effort to immerse herself in her role. However, no matter how hard she tried, she always felt there were discrepancies during the key moments of a few lines of dialogue. Although in this play, she was just a loser second female lead next to the male lead. Not only was her screen time short, but her lines were also lackluster, deviating significantly from the original work. While adaptations are expected in stage dramas, the changes to Akani's character were nearly drastic. To this, the male lead Aqua was completely indifferent. Compared to their last romantic reality show, this stage drama was vastly superior. However, to address Akani's concerns, Aqua took the initiative to speak with the producer, risking offending the scriptwriter to explain the issues he encountered. While everyone was having a lively discussion, Ms. Yoriko arrived at the theater with the original author of the play. Yoriko greeted everyone warmly, but the author, suffering from social anxiety, always hid behind, not daring to meet anyone. In a gathering full of handsome men and beautiful women, she always felt like a pitiful goblin. Nevertheless, she endured and watched everyone's first dress rehearsal. Although it was just a simple run-through of the script, the final effect was very good indeed. Indeed, good actors can always bring out the true charm of their characters. After a round of praise, the original author proposed an idea to modify the script. Everyone was a bit shocked, but when the author said they wanted to change everything, everyone was even more stunned. Tarako just wanted to get back to school early, but little did she know she would come across a body hanging from a utility pole. As Tarako was at a loss for what to do, the body surprisingly began to drip snot, which miraculously flew onto Tarako's head. The next second, the body opened its eyes. The reason it was hanging there was, of course, because of the antlers on its head. Suddenly, Shikanoko stared at Tarako with a death glare, frightening Tarako immensely. But upon further thought, if she took a detour to school at this time, she would definitely be late, which was absolutely unacceptable for an honor student. So, she decided to act as if she hadn't seen anything and prepared to leave. At that moment, a terrifying voice came from behind. "Are you going to just stand by and watch someone die?" Frightened, Tarako hurriedly explained that she hadn't ignored a person in need. She thought the other was just playing around on the utility pole. Just as Tarako was about to leave, Shikanoko quickly said, "Every morning you pass this road, you will remember my face and live in regret for the rest of your life." At this, Tarako, finally deciding out of fear to save her, managed to rescue Shikanoko after some effort. Curious, Tarako asked why she was in such a place. Shikanoko didn't know either, and even called Tarako "bad girl, big sister." Hearing the word bad, Tarako instantly got upset and loudly questioned her. "Who are you calling a delinquent?" Tarako claimed she was gentle and virtuous and could not possibly be a delinquent. Shikanoko stated it was her antlers that detected it, shocking Tarako. Tarako suddenly realized that staying any longer with this person would be very dangerous, as she had indeed been a real troublemaker in the past. The exposed Tarako quickly looked for a chance to leave. After returning to school, Tarako felt uneasy, sensing that something big was about to happen. Sure enough, in the next second, Shikanoko walked in as a transfer student but got stuck because of her long antlers. She then forcibly broke through the wall to enter, acting as if nothing had happened, and cheerfully introduced herself to everyone, who warmly applauded her. Tarako suddenly noticed an empty seat next to her. Was she going to sit next to her? This could spell doom for her image as a well-behaved, top-performing student. Her happy high school life was in jeopardy, so Tarako decided to take the initiative and awkwardly greeted Shikanoko, telling her to ask her anything if confused. Shikanoko politely thanked her. Tarako thought this would lead to a peaceful high school life, but that was wishful thinking. Shikanoko called her "bad girl, big sister," making Tarako feel like the sky was falling. The classmates were incredulous. So, Tarako is a delinquent? Tarako, sweating profusely, begged Shikanoko to stop talking nonsense. Shikanoko insisted she wasn't lying, and even knew Tarako was a virgin because her antlers reacted. This statement drew intense attention from classmates and teachers. At this point, Tarako really wished Shikanoko would stop talking, and she shyly bowed her head in embarrassment over the topic. During the break, Tarako wanted to have a serious talk with Shikanoko, but as soon as she pushed open the classroom door, she found a pile of little deer cookies on her desk. It turned out that this was Shikanoko's way of thanking Tarako for saving her life. However, seeing the drool from Shikanoko, Tarako couldn't help but complain, as it seemed like they were made for Shikanoko herself. Seeing that Tarako was not pleased with the gift, Shikanoko directly pulled off one of her antlers and gave it to Tarako. Tarako looked disgusted, and the next second, Shikanoko explained that the antlers were edible. Tarako showed no interest. Thinking it was because the antler was drooled on, Shikanoko pulled off the one she hadn't chewed and offered it to her. Seeing that Tarako still didn't want it, Shikanoko reluctantly put the antler back on. But then, Shikanoko thought Tarako wanted to eat deer meat. However, in order to repay her kindness, Shikanoko eventually agreed and knelt in front of Tarako, offering herself for Tarako to eat. Tarako was speechless, feeling as if she were bullying Shikanoko. Noticing the strange looks from other students, Tarako quickly dragged Shikanoko to the restroom, warning her not to call her bad girl big sister again, and not to mention that she used to be a delinquent, or else she would mock Shikanoko's antlers. The next second, Shikanoko became sad, realizing that they couldn't avoid such idle gossip. She forced a smile and apologized. Hearing this, Tarako also felt she had been too harsh. Just as Tarako was about to apologize to Shikanoko, Shikanoko suddenly removed her skull. After school, after being tormented all day, Tarako was just about to go home when she heard a loud noise from the storeroom. Rushing over, she found Shikanoko bloodied on the ground. Tarako was at a loss. The next second, Shikanoko got up, having only fallen from a ladder. Tarako's face stiffened. After helping Shikanoko bandage her wounds, Tarako also helped clean up. It turned out Shikanoko had founded a club called Deer Club and planned to use this place as the club's base, which the teacher had also agreed to. To Tarako's surprise, the teacher appointed her as the president of the Deer Club, all thanks to Shikanoko's meddling. Unable to refuse the teacher, Tarako unwittingly became the president of this strange club. At that moment, Shikanoko handed a brush to Tarako, because the purpose of the Deer Club was to take care of deer. As Tarako was brushing Shikanoko, a strange woman in the distance was watching the two of them. Angelica simply couldn't understand why she, whose instantaneous techniques were unmatched in the world, couldn't even defeat a lowly adventurer today. Worse, the male protagonist suspected her of having secured her position in the Knight's Order through backdoor connections. Little did she know that to Rick, her movements appeared as slow as a snail's. Rick couldn't help but wonder if he might actually be stronger after all, which was understandable given that his masters were the strongest adventurers on the continent, and the training he had undergone was nothing short of hellish. The constant belittlement from his masters led him to believe that they represented only the starting point of combat power on the continent. After successfully graduating, Rick planned to register his level at the Adventurers Guild. He learned that to obtain an adventurer's identity, he would need to pass a test. No sooner had he completed the procedures than a drunkard approached the front desk, causing trouble. With a spirit of helping others, Rick quickly patted the man's chest to sober him up, and sure enough, the man immediately quieted down, even frothing at the mouth in gratitude to Rick. Seeing that the situation was getting out of hand, Rick quickly smoothed things over by claiming he had been confused by the alcohol and advised the onlookers not to drink counterfeit alcohol like he had. After obtaining his examination slip, when Elfelt, his master, inquired about his progress, Rick, distractedly staring at a woman with large breasts, gave irrelevant answers. Unbeknownst to Rick, the front desk was in chaos by then. His handprint had even left an imprint on a steel armor. Moreover, someone recognized the drunk man's identity. He was an A-class criminal recently wanted by the authorities. Soon, the first magic test began. Most participants were above level D, but when it was Rick's turn, everyone laughed at him. However, unbeknownst to them, as Rick left, the crystal ball cracked. The examiner, however, didn't care, assuming it was normal wear and tear. Then came the strength test, where the examiner scored participants based on the damage they inflicted on slime-filled punching bags. Rick was initially afraid, having trained with a golden slime as hard as dragon's teeth. Soon, a wealthy heir took the stage, hailed by all as a prodigious genius. Rick was curious about his strength. The heir struck a supremely cliched pose, drawing everyone's attention. However, when he launched a fireball, though it was very small, it received lavish praise from the audience. Rick, knowing that his lowly master could unleash fireballs not only larger, but also of nation-destroying power, began to suspect that the wealthy heir was deliberately suppressing his power. If so, he truly was a genius. When it was Rick's turn, seeing that he was a 30-year-old newbie adventurer and considering his poor magic test results, the examiner advised Rick to give up on becoming an adventurer. Rick was almost persuaded to quit, but remembering his years of effort, He assumed his strongest attack posture and smashed the punching bag. Despite the wealthy heir's displeasure, he restrained himself and proceeded to the next test. Unexpectedly, Rick not only easily defended against a 4th-tier magic attack, but also declared his intention to challenge a 5th-tier spell. Hearing this, the examiner became furious, feeling underestimated, and launched a powerful attack. As expected, the 5th-tier spell shattered the defensive barrier, but Rick remained completely unharmed. The Knight Captain's attention was captured by the tremendous uproar. Learning that Rick not only effortlessly blocked a 5th-tier magic spell, but also shattered a slime-filled punching bag with his bare hands, the Knight Captain became interested. After all the tests were completed, the wealthy heir came to cause trouble again. Annoyed by Rick stealing the spotlight all day, he was not pleased, but he wasn't foolish either. He directly brought in his sister Angelica, a 2nd-class knight of the kingdom, planning to teach Rick a lesson. Angelica casually threw her glove at Rick as a challenge for a duel. Rick, mistaking the glove for a free gift, was unaware that picking up the glove in the kingdom meant accepting the duel. With no choice, Rick followed her to the duel arena. As per tradition, both duelists could make a victory demand. Angelica demanded that the loser serve the winner until death, which seemed like an easy condition. However, Rick panicked upon hearing 2nd-class knight, comparable to a B-class adventurer, and even vomited on the spot, thinking he was just an F-class weakling. Encouraged by Elfelt, Rick gathered himself to face the duel. Angelica planned to intimidate Rick right from the start, so she buffed herself and launched her attack, instantly slicing through the iron bars behind her. Seeing Rick's shocked expression, she thought her move had intimidated him, but Rick was only rubbing his eyes in disbelief. When she attacked again, Rick found it too slow. Is this the Knight Order's strength? He wondered. Unable to believe it, as her speed was comparable to a 1st-class knight, Angelica accelerated and executed her fastest sword technique. To Rick, however, it still seemed as slow as a snail. Just then, Angelica unexpectedly kicked a stone, causing her body to spin out uncontrollably like a windmill. This disorderly attack made Rick dismiss his thoughts of being strong. To ease the awkwardness, Angelica, trying to maintain composure, praised Rick for evading even such an attack and declared she would get serious now. She then used her tri-foot kill, a move she could only perform 3 times. Rick easily dodged it again. Angelica panicked. The move was too draining, but determined not to lose the duel, she used it again, only to be dodged once more. With only one chance left, she went all in. But another mishap occurred. A stone on the ground tripped her, causing her to fly low across the ground. Rick, thinking she was aiming for a crippling blow, stopped her with a punch, but accidentally used too much force, creating a huge crater. Angelica was dumbfounded, realizing she might have been knocked out if not for the trip. Rick regretted that his punch had deviated again. Terrified, Angelica asked who he was. Rick replied that he was just the worst F-class adventurer, a claim she couldn't believe. With no choice but to continue the duel, Rick was ready to fight, but for her own safety, Angelica quickly surrendered. As Rick was still in shock, she turned and left swiftly. But Rick wasn't foolish. "What about the stakes we agreed on?" he reminded. Angelica, realizing her predicament, turned pale and ran off quickly. That might have been the fastest she moved today. This is definitely the most explosive new anime of July. Harley Quinn, along with a host of Gotham criminals, has crossed into another world, letting the people of this other world experience Gotham's style of handling things. Here we have King Shark, whose intelligence is on the level of a kindergarten, and the adorable Queen Harley Quinn, a former psychiatrist. Returning to the beginning of the story, under the leadership of Amanda, researchers, with the help of a person from another world, successfully opened the portal to this other dimension. Meanwhile, just after blowing up a building in Gotham, Joker and Harley Quinn, upon hearing this news, decide to cause a ruckus in the new world. Thus, Joker, decisively driving away, scatters money bags all over, using the citizens gathering cash to evade the police pursuit. Joker's vehicle is quite peculiar as well. It's controlled by a piano. At that moment, Harley Quinn suddenly pulls the brake to stop by a bar to celebrate with a drink. However, in Gotham, the term "buy" isn't quite appropriate. She punches a man because she had noticed from the moment she entered that the bar was full of undercover cops, leading to a fight. Just after parking, Joker also senses something amiss. Unbelievably, even the military was deployed to capture them. Under heavy fire, Joker had no choice but to leave his girlfriend behind and retreat temporarily. After dealing with all the undercover cops, Harley Quinn escapes to the rooftop. Just as she contacts Joker to pick her up, a masked samurai blocks her path. Ignoring Harley's words, the samurai attacks with a sword. Although Harley quickly loses her weapon, she does not give up and fights in a Jackie Chan style, using various props around her to distract the samurai. However, Harley is still no match for the samurai and is soon knocked out and taken to the Gotham talent market. After being imprisoned for 6 months, Amanda finds Harley Quinn and plans to send her as part of a vanguard team to explore the other world. But Harley Quinn won't just obey. She kicks the warden in the groin. However, the prison does not tolerate her defiance, and after Amanda incapacitates Harley Quinn with a stun, she is sent to another world. Accompanying Harley Quinn are 5 other criminals: Deadshot, the third-rate actor Clayface, Peacemaker, and the foodie king Shark, well-known members of the Suicide Squad. To prevent them from disobeying orders or escaping, Amanda implants bombs in their necks. If they disobey or stray beyond the range of signal reception for more than 72 hours, their heads will explode. Upon hearing this, everyone calmed down instantly. But just as the soldiers were untying their hands, their plane was shot down and crashed to the ground. It turned out that humans were fighting with beastmen on the ground and had accidentally hit their plane. Harley Quinn was about to step outside the plane to check the situation, but nearly fell off a cliff when she misstepped. It turns out this world was actually made up of several floating islands connected together. When the rest of the team got off the plane, they were stunned by the scene before them, thinking they were on a movie set. Just as they marveled at the realism of the set, the Beastmen had nearly wiped out the humans and started surrounding the group. Because of the language barrier, they couldn't understand what the Beastmen were saying. One of the men even asked where the director was, but the next second, she was attacked. Seeing this, the group finally understood the situation. Being criminals, they were all too familiar with the smell of blood, so they realized this was not a movie set at all. This only excited Harley Quinn, and a battle was about to erupt. This was King Shark, whose intelligence was at the level of a kindergartner, and the adorable Queen Harley Quinn, a former psychiatrist. The masked man was Peacemaker, a violent peacekeeper who would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. The handsome man, Clayface, had a malleable body that could transform at will, but there were too many beastmen. Realizing that killing them all was endless, the group decided to target their leader first, figuring that killing the general would make the rest retreat. However, just as Deadshot was aiming at the pig general, a brother stood in front of him. But this was no challenge for Deadshot, who never missed a shot. Seeing their leader killed, the Beastmen turned and fled. After the Beastmen left, the previously hiding captain of the Knights came out. At first, he thought they were allies, but after seeing King Shark eating a corpse, he immediately aimed his sword at them. Deadshot responded by shooting the sword out of his hand and tried to explain, but the captain, not understanding a word, decisively used magic to summon his sword back. Seeing that the opponent could use both sword and magic, Clayface, in his typical dramatic flair, realized everything. He believed this was like Alice in Wonderland, a popular term also known as another world. He excitedly told the knight that they were the chosen warriors from another world, and then asked the knight to take them to see the king. The next second, he was thrown into jail. He had not expected that his first experience in another world would be eating prison food. Amidst their arguing, it was soon mealtime, and they were discussing plans to escape. But unexpectedly, a few large demons appeared, claiming Clayface had taken their spot. However, the group couldn't understand a word. Seeing that the humans in front of them showed no respect, the demon boss, enraged, immediately launched an attack. Deadshot flipped the table, declaring, "Then no one eats." Harley Quinn, with her agile movements, jumped onto a large demon and began slapping him across the face. Under their combined assault, the large demons were quickly toppled to the ground. Hearing the commotion, a jailer rushed over and pulled out a magic wand. With a casual wave, he instantly subdued the members of the Suicide Squad. Indeed, the newcomers to this otherworldly realm had not yet adapted to its combat methods. In solitary confinement, They met soldiers from the I Bureau, who had been transported by Amanda earlier. He explained the situation and stressed the urgency of escaping to get back to the portal to receive a signal from Earth and reset the bomb's timer. Otherwise, not only their lives but also their mission would be at risk. Hearing this, everyone looked towards the famished King Shark, persuading him to act as the vanguard for their escape. He forcefully broke down the prison door. Coincidentally, a patrolling jailer saw this scene, but, prepared, the group quickly dealt with him before he could cast any spells. To facilitate their escape, Clayface copied the jailer's keys and released all the prisoners, plunging the entire jail into chaos. Peacemaker declared it was time to step up, prompting all the prisoners to rush out. The jailers hurriedly attempted to cast spells to subdue Harley Quinn and her group, but they were not easily subdued. The group coordinated effortlessly and cleaned up, inadvertently forming a temporary alliance with the large demons. Thus, the entire jail became their stage for showcasing their talents, achieving a resounding victory. Meanwhile, Knights of the Kingdom were ordered to bring these otherworldly individuals to meet the king. However, upon arriving, they witnessed the jail now occupied by the Suicide Squad, with the prisoners reveling in their newfound freedom. At this moment, the plain natives of this otherworld felt the shock of Gotham. Just as tensions were about to escalate, Rick Flag arrived in time to stop the Suicide Squad's actions. Since he was the only one who knew the location of the portal, the group had no choice but to obey. They were bound and brought before the king. Initially, the king was displeased with their brazen demeanor and planned to execute them as a warning. However, after hearing Rick Flag's words, he changed his mind. It turned out that the Empire, their enemy, had grown stronger because its military leaders had been replaced with people from another world. As the saying goes, only magic can defeat magic. If the kingdom wanted to stand a chance, they too needed to enlist the people present into their army. Only then did the group realize why Rick Flag was left alone in prison. His companions had abandoned him and fled to the Empire. Hearing his counsel, the king decided to take his advice. However, to prevent them from defecting to the Empire, the king took Rick Flag as a hostage. With no other options, the group had to comply. However, they demanded that the king return their belongings first. Once fully armed, the group quickly arrived on the battlefield. At that time, the kingdom's soldiers were engaged in combat with demons controlled by the Empire. Under their suicidal attacks, the kingdom's soldiers quickly fell into a disadvantage. Seeing this, the group was curious about how the Empire had trained these demons. Hearing this, Harley Quinn laughed and said, "What training? This is outright brainwashing." Upon hearing this, Deadshot seemed to think of something, and then led the group to search around in the castle in front of them. They soon found their target, one of Deadshot's old cronies, Ratcatcher, the man controlling these beasts. Deadshot greeted him, but the anticipated reunion of old friends did not occur. Ratcatcher directly commanded the demons to attack Deadshot, because it was because of Deadshot's past actions that he had earned the derogatory nickname Ratcatcher. At that time, unable to resist, he had no choice but to submit. Now that he had come to this other world, his powers had greatly increased, and he could control more than just rats. He was determined to make Deadshot pay for his past actions. With that, he raised his staff, causing the surrounding demons to enter a frenzied state. Ratcatcher thought that, with his current strength, it would be easy to deal with the group in front of him. But what he didn't know was that after coming here, not only he had his abilities enhanced. Now, as long as there was enough water, theoretically, Clayface could control everything underfoot. Saying this, he had Deadshot shoot through the water storage above. As a large amount of water poured down, Clayface activated his abilities. Taking advantage of Ratcatcher's moment of distraction, Peacemaker pulled out his Desert Eagle to shoot him in the head, but unexpectedly, someone intervened at that moment. Seeing the person's face, Harley Quinn gritted her teeth in anger. The person who had captured her and sent her here was Amanda, and unexpectedly, she too had come to this world. Before Harley Quinn could recover from her anger, the entire castle collapsed due to Clayface's abilities. Seeing this scene, the knight's face instantly darkened, since the castle was a property of the kingdom. "Are you helping or causing trouble?" Meanwhile, elsewhere, the samurai woman said to the rescued Ratcatcher, "I will only help you this once. If the Emperor of the Empire thinks you are incompetent, you should know what awaits you." Hearing this, Ratcatcher said not to worry. Next time, he would make sure Deadshot and his group understood how terrifying he could be. As he spoke, the demons in the shadows began to stir quietly.